Today, we are going to talk about contract deadlines. And deadlines are one of the most important aspects of a real estate transaction because the dates in the contract can really affect your outcome. When an offer is made, the first date is there's an expiration date, which is determined by the buyer on that offer. And the seller must respond by the expiration date or the offer expires. Most of the time, there's not much time for the seller to consider the offer, usually about 24 hours or less. And if the seller misses the deadline without the extension signed by all parties in place, the buyer is no longer obligated to their offer and can go find another house. So next is the earnest money must be received within a certain number of days. A lot of times buyers write in their offer that they want 3 to 5 days to turn in their earnest money. And if the earnest money isn't delivered where it's supposed to go and the receipt isn't in hand by the deadline, then technically, per the terms of the contract, the buyer is in breach of contract. So in this scenario, the seller could actually terminate the contract and accept another offer. Buyer inspections, they must be completed by the stated deadline in the contract, and that request for repairs must be sent to the seller prior to the expiration of that deadline with inspection reports. So this is the buyer's opportunity to ask the seller to complete items that they want to have repaired. And if the seller doesn't receive the request by the deadline, then the buyer is obligated to accept the property in as-is condition. So let's break all that down a little bit. If a buyer determines that the roof is leaking and the request to repair isn't received by the deadline, then they've accepted that property in the condition that it is in. They can no longer expect the seller to repair or replace the roof. And they won't be able to cancel the contract due to the property condition. They always can still try to ask for repairs, but most of the time it doesn't happen. Once the buyer sends the repair request to the seller, that begins the repair negotiation period. Between the receipt of the repairs request and the negotiation deadline, we renegotiate to make sure that both parties have come together in an agreement on repairs that the seller agrees to do. If the buyer and the seller can't reach an agreement, or the seller doesn't respond by that negotiation deadline, the buyer must decide whether to back out of the deal or take the house in as-is condition. If they don't respond by the negotiation deadline, then they're taking it in as-is condition. I know it can be all kinds of confusion, which is why you have a real estate agent that's helping you through the process. But I tell all my clients, you want those dates in your phone. You want them in your planner, sticky notes on the fridge, or on your computer screen. Whatever it takes to make sure you do not miss those dates. The last dates I'll address here are the closing deadline and possession of the property. Obviously, we need to take the closing date seriously, but getting to closing on time is dependent on a lot of people, including the lender and the loan underwriter. Appraisers, they run behind sometimes. You got the escrow company and more. If something happens and you realize you can't close on time or meet any of those other deadlines, it is critical we renegotiate a contract extension before the deadline expires. I realize this is a lot of information here to digest, but of course, if you're working with an experienced agent, they will be able to help you monitor the necessary dates and deadlines. Because I want to help you establish roots in Central Virginia and set you up for buying success.